trauma. This was said by Palestinian psychiatrist and human rights activist Dr. Samah Jabr. She says a traumatized society has a damaging effect for many generations to come. She was speaking at the International Women's Day debate hosted by the Thabo Mbeki Foundation and the University of South Africa.
Is not sufficient to treat the collective trauma because the West didn't have that experience. And the vast majority of the world suffered from collective trauma. And we have to invent, we have to authenticize our work in therapy, in psychology, in psychiatry, and to invent methods to treat the collective trauma. My grandmother is not a psychiatrist, but she can treat the collective trauma because of her narrative, because of the stories that she tells. Collective healing through oral history. Women are able, through their narratives, to expose us to the past and help us to reprocess and work through our collective memories, and thus to treat our historical trauma. In their stories and capacities to relate and mentalize, women sue and repair the damaged fabric of the society and preserve the national identity of the people of Palestine. A trauma to an individual creates damage to the brain tissue, but a trauma to a society creates damage to the social fabric. The society that is traumatized becomes envious, distrustful. It internalizes a feeling of inferiority. It internalizes shame. And it has a very damaging effect for many generations to come. That's why it is very important that the project of the liberation of the mind and psychological healing should go hand in hand with the project of the liberation of the land.
All right, we see from our visuals that are actually next to me at the moment, President Cyril Ramaphosa has just arrived at the Blue Valley Golf Estate where our reporter Ntlatla Khatlane is there at the moment. As soon as we can get a word with the President, or as soon as he gets up on the podium to perhaps address the ANC Women's League, we'll of course keep you updated, and we will certainly cross to that. For now though, more news. The joint meeting of Labour and Employment ministers from southern and East African countries have paid tribute to the role Tanzania played in South Africa's fight for freedom. The ministers were attending a Southern African Development Community meeting to try to find solutions to Africa's labour problems. SABC's Daniel Kijo has more.
Ministers from all over Southern Africa in one of Tanzania's most historic towns. Bagamoyo was the capital of German East Africa during the colonial era, but it also played a major role in Southern Africa's fight for freedom. And on Friday, ministers paid tribute to it.
Countries like Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and other nations, even South Africa, use this place as a center for freedom fighters. They used to come here to learn different freedom fighting strategies during Julius Nyerere's era.
They were in Bagamoyo to close a meeting discussing widening the scope of labor migration across multiple Southern African countries, potentially changing millions of lives. The host minister says it's time to put those plans into action.
As the ministers now head back to their countries, it's now time to execute what we agreed. It's up to the Secretariat to oversee this and to make sure all that was agreed on is done. Secondly, we agreed as countries to visit each other and share technical knowledge and skills.
Youth unemployment is a big challenge for the SADC region. It stands between 9 and 11% by official estimates, above the global level of 5.1%. A change in labor migration policies was presented at the meeting. Botswana's labor minister says countries must work together to bring changes.
So we need to correct ourselves as SADC, as AU, to be able to now see ourselves as an opportunity for the future, as opposed to be seeing Africans against Africans as problems.
This meeting will be the last hosted by Tanzania as the chair of SADC, before it hands over the chairmanship to Mozambique in August. The SADC Ministers of Labour's meeting ends here in Bagamoyo at the Kaole ruins, a place rich in history. But their challenge now is to put into action plans discussed to build a new future for 400 million plus Africans living in the region. Daniel Kijo, SABC, Dar es Salaam.
All right, let's take a look at this week's episode.